Are you a tech startup that is starving for cash, or are you an established company that is doing innovative research? How would you like to receive tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual recurring incentives from the federal government? Want to know more? Keep watching this episode of Techopia Live. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. Welcome to another episode of Techopia Live. Our mission here at Techopia Live is threefold. We want to create a deeper understanding of what's happening in the local tech system. We want to explore issues that are common to local tech firms. And three, we want to help level up Ottawa's tech sector. Thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share it with a friend to expand our Techopia community. Okay, let's get down to business. At Techopia, we have produced, believe it or not, 260 episodes of this podcast. So that's a pretty good number. And you might be wondering, like, how is that possible? How do you guys do that? Well, the answer is that we've got a number of fantastic champions, local and national businesses that invest in this journalism project. And that means we have bonus episodes every once in a while to go a little in depth on a specific topic with our Techopia champions. And today we've got a great issue to explore with a terrific champion. If you're a tech founder, especially if you're pre-revenue, you are hungry for funds. Funds to develop your products and services, funds to pay your team, and funds to do quite literally everything you need to do to become a success. So besides bootstrapping and friends and family, where can you turn for money? Well, one of the really important options is something called SR&ED, that stands for Scientific Research and Experimental Development Incentive Program. That's a mouthful, so we just call it SR&ED. This is a federal program that is quite unique to Canada. In fact, I've heard local tech titan Terry Matthews describe the program as one of the best in the world. He himself is a champion of this program. So to dig into this, we've got a true expert. He leads EY's incentives practice in Canada. That means our guest spends his working days helping technology-based companies find new financing and R&D. He's quite the guy. He's got a Ph.D. in engineering physics, specializing in telecommunications. That sounds pretty relevant to a tech market like Ottawa. He's an inventor on 12 granted U.S. patents and author of more than 50 published papers and conference presentations. Please welcome from EY Canada, here is Matt Pearson. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here today. And Matt, I think we've got a really good topic, something that's very relevant to the Techopia community. But before we get into the nitty gritty of all this, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself, Matt, because, I read your LinkedIn, I read your bio, and I was like, wow, this is a guy people should know. So it's very un-Canadian, Matt, but I'm asking you to boast about yourself for a second.
Yeah, sure. No, that's very kind of you. Like you mentioned, my background's on the technology side. I worked for Ernst & Young, and like many people on our team, my background is not on the accounting. It's more on science and technology. And really, I got started in large corporations. I worked at Intel for a while down in the US, and then came back to Canada and worked in the telecom sector for about 12 years or so. And part of that, I was a co-founder at a technology startup in Ottawa, and helped run that for about 8 years or so, and took it public on the venture exchange. So I have a background that sort of helps me understand why the SR&ED program is so important. It's something that so many startups, live and breathe on a day-to-day basis, just because it is so important to them. And I exited that company back in 2012, and now I help lead the technology sector and the financial services sector for our incentives practice at EY.
That's awesome. And I think, if I were to summarize that, it means that you've sat in your client's shoes, right? So
Right.
you've been in their shoes and you've turned to experts like this. So I think
Yeah.
that's so cool. So I gave people like this high level sense of SR&ED, the tax credit program, but maybe we'll get you, the true expert, to define this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so SR&ED, and a lot of people call it SR&ED for short, and it's like you said, it's the flagship R&D tax credit that exists in Canada, and it's really there to incent companies to do their R&D in Canada. And so it is, as you mentioned, one of the most generous R&D incentives programs anywhere in the world, and it helps to cover R&D costs performed in Canada. And the challenge with the program is that not everything qualifies for SR&ED. So not everything that you do in R&D will qualify as SR&ED. And that's where most companies need help. And that's where our team, engineers and scientists who have been through this before can help prioritize what you want to highlight in those applications and what's important to those reviewers, just from a pure eligibility perspective.
And I think, Matt, we're not going to get into like the in-depth nitty-gritty again of eligibility, but I just want to emphasize, I think most of our Techopia audience has heard of SR&ED and is familiar with it, but the why is, and I'll use this use case and then you can correct me if you need to, is there are a lot of pre-revenue startups. It's not only for startups, so I know you're going to say that in a second,
Yeah.
that like need a source of cash, like to get to a product or revenue. So not only is this the flagship program, but from our audience perspective, like this is potentially your most non-dilutive capital early stages. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important, is because it's probably the most prevalent source of funding for technology startups, hands down. And it's non-dilutive financing, like you said. So you're not giving up equity, you're not giving away shares to get this funding. It's being provided to you to help create jobs and do that research in Canada. And because of that, it's leveraged by so many startups, almost all startups. And it doesn't have to be technology either. It can be manufacturing, it can be oil and gas, forestry. Every different sector is able to leverage that program, and that's why it's just so prevalent across all industries.
Cool. And maybe a couple other follow-ups, and we'll move forward with some other topics. But so we should emphasize too that we've just both of us focused on startups. But to be clear, and by the way, everyone can go to the CRA and read about the eligibility. But to be clear in this in our discussion, it's not only for startups and it's not only for technology companies. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
That's right. So any company of any size can leverage the program. There is an enhanced credit within the SR&ED program that does benefit smaller Canadian controlled private companies. So, and it does make a big difference. So that credit can be 35% for those small Canadian controlled companies. Whereas the same work done by a larger corporation attracts a 15% credit. So it is a big enhancement for startups, but every company can leverage it. And the other interesting thing is that there's no size limit to a SR&ED claim. It can be a very small project, or it can be a very, very large project. There's no maximum amount to that claim every year.
It's a great point. And we're not going to generalize here. I will say in my personal experience when I'm speaking with local tech companies, like it is often just, again, if you're not familiar with this to our audience, it can be in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, even for a startup. I think that's relatively correct.
Easily,
Matt? Yeah, easily. So we're not talking about a $2,000 tax credit on your loss or something like that. And again, Matt, I keep repeating myself. We won't get into all of the eligibility, but just define it at a high level. So if I'm a tech startup, pre-revenue, I've got 10 employees, I'm 2 years away from, what sorts of things would criteria would factor into a claim? Maybe pick that one up for us.
Yeah, so really the SR&ED program is 100% focused at a technology level. So it's less interested about the business and the market. It's really, really focused at a technology level. So what we need to understand when we prepare these claims is what is that new innovation that you're working on? What are the technology challenges that really get in the way of that? And if we can demonstrate that, there are some existing technologies out there, obviously, that might be able to do most of what you want, but they don't do everything that you need. If we can show that gap and justify that there's no clear, obvious way to bridge that gap, then all of the work that goes into resolving those uncertainties, those challenges, we can often claim for SR&ED.
That's great.
And the beauty of the SR&ED program is that not only can we claim the hours, the labor costs that go into it, we can also claim overhead costs, the material costs that go into building prototypes. All of those can be included in there. And so by the time you collect all those various costs, for a small startup, claiming, say they have 100K in eligible salary costs, the actual SR&ED credit that we can get from that is well over 60K. So it's an incredibly high percentage of those eligible costs.
Wow.
For these Canadian controlled companies. Yeah.
That's very cool. Matt, there probably are people watching this that are a bit more sophisticated. So they're like, yeah, SR&ED, man, I've been doing it for 10 years. So this question is more for them. So maybe they're a CFO or a CTO or a CEO, startup founder that's interested in this next question. It seems like the SR&ED program is great. People acknowledge it, but there's also some ongoing debate, like any tax incentive program, on how it should be structured, how it is optimized. So maybe for that audience, give us an update on the current level of discussions around SR&EDs and any sort of news, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, the SR&ED was featured in the latest federal budget, and so there are some changes coming to the program, and all of those changes appear to be very positive. So they announced another $600 million being allocated to the SR&ED program over the next 4 years. And it's all there. It's all being allocated to improve the program and the way it's administered, and hopefully make the whole process a bit less onerous on those who are claiming it. So right now, some of the challenges that you mentioned are the fact that you do have to keep some records, some documentation for SR&ED purposes, and there are, the application process for SR&ED can be somewhat onerous. And it seems like a lot of the proposed changes are going to try to simplify that application process somewhat, potentially change the rates. There's a number of different things that they're looking at to make changes, but all of them are positive, and they're all being driven by a consultation process that the Department of Finance is going through with claimants seeking new ideas on how to improve the program. So it's really, really positive.
And the larger economic point, and I don't think it's a political one for you to answer, Matt, is that both the current government and the governor of the Bank of Canada have repeatedly said that Canada might have a productivity issue. So I think it would be fair to say that when the government thinks of the SR&ED program, this is probably like one of the levers, so to speak, of continuing to improve Canadian productivity.
That's right. The SR&ED program is sort of the cornerstone of all federal incentives and a lot of provincial incentives. And then the other half of that coin are the discretionary credits. Those are the traditional government grants that you might get. The difference between the government grants and SR&ED is that SR&ED is something that you can apply for every single year. And, regardless of, the type of market that you're in, whereas a lot of the discretionary grants are very, very focused on a particular sector, or they require a certain level of job creation. There's different focuses for each program, but in SR&ED, it's there available to everyone every year, and that's really a big difference between that and some discretionary credits.
Yeah, that's a big distinction for sure, and that's a perfect transition, Matt. We're going to start wrapping up our great discussion, but I wanted to say that we focused a lot in our talk right now on SR&ED. But in fact, it's not the only program that's out there. And as I understand it, Matt, other programs can kind of be integrated into SR&ED. Maybe let's zoom out in this last question and just talk about what else someone like you at EY can help with.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge maybe that people don't fully understand when they start looking at incentives is, in this incentives world, 1 + 1 + 1 does not equal 3. So you cannot often get, multiple government grants and SR&ED and just add them all up and that be your only source of funding, because there are some stacking rules that go along with a lot of these programs. And so what we try to do is build an incentive strategy around this, where SR&ED might be the foundation for that, but we also want to go after some other government grants, other incentives. But being able to optimize those so that they don't, one doesn't just subtract from the other is it's a really important piece of this work. And so we typically advise people to develop an incentive strategy and treat it like any other project within your business. If you're going to get $1 million from SR&ED and other government grants, you need to treat it like $1 million customer. And so it does take some time. It takes some investment in people and effort to put it together. But if you treat it like a customer, it really gets the attention it deserves, and that's what we try to do.
I love that point. And just maybe as we wrap up here, Matt, one, just a acknowledgement of the complexity in this and why someone might need someone like you at EY. But if someone is watching this and is like, I need some advice from Matt, give me kind of like this 60-second overview of how would they engage with someone like you, and just kind of high level, what would that process look like a bit, Matt?
Yeah, normally when we connect with a new client, it starts with just a simple discussion about the work they've been doing over the past year, maybe what's coming up in the following year, and we try to identify the areas within there that are going to be relevant for SR&ED or for other government grants, other credits that we might go after. And from there, we can put together an incentive strategy, like I said, where we can often do it on a contingent basis. So nobody has to pay any fees until they actually receive funding, which is a big deal for a lot of startups as well. So that whole process, typically requires several months to go through. So it's something that you want to do as early as possible. But then from there, it becomes an annual part of the business, and it's something that we revisit. SR&ED every year. We look at new government grants that are constantly changing. There's always new programs that are created. And just staying on top of that whole ecosystem it's an important part of any startup and any small company that goes looking for new investors. The fact that they have explored those areas, they're leveraging every incentive that they have access to, really adds a lot of credibility to the founders when they go and talk to other investors. They know that they're stretching every dollar they get to the maximum they can.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Matt, listen, we've run out of time. I want to thank you with all your expertise and knowledge when it comes to SR&ED for spending some time with us. We'll have your contact information in the show notes. And on a larger scale, Matt, I just want to, on behalf of everyone at OBJ, thank EY for its support of our Techopia project. It's greatly appreciated, and you helped keep the news, the technology news, rolling in Ottawa. So thanks a lot, Matt. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Nice to see you.
All right, you have a great day. Bye-bye. All right, that was Matt Pearson from EY. Again, we'll put some of his contact information in the show notes. As we wrap up, there's another EY item that I wanted to point out. EY and OBJ come together around our Techopia project. And we just produced our annual magazine called Techopia EY Insights. It's a fantastic magazine full of features and lists and data and resources. It's hard to get the physical copy. We did print some beautiful glossy magazines. The easiest way right now is to go to techopiaeyinsights.ca, and you'll get what we call the digital flip book on it. A couple other OBJ-related items. One, something that's quite new that just officially launched, by the way, in June 2024. It is the new OBJ Data Center. If any of you are familiar with our Book of Lists, which has existed for almost 25 years in this kind of big, oversized printed directory, the data center is not only the digitization in an online database of that, it's the doubling of that data. So at obj.ca/data, we've created this fantastic new tool. You can look at, I think it's 57 lists right now, almost 1,000 companies, 1,000 executives. All of that is right there. You can preview. Now, if you want to get really into the data center, you need to become an OBJ Insider. And this is a subscription and membership program for our special OBJ readers that allows them to access our exclusive news, get a biweekly email newsletter, get our publications mailed to the door, and we put the OBJ data center in. So I urge you to consider to become a OBJ Insider. Go to obj.ca/subscribe. And as I was just telling Matt, it helps support the local business journalism that we do. And for the very latest in local news, a reminder, you can visit 24/7, open 365 days a year. Go to obj.ca. Thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. We hope Techopia is keeping you connected and informed. Let's keep building Ottawa's technology utopia. That is Techopia. See you soon. Bye, everyone.